Hey, welcome to On the Chain tonight. We've got a great show for you guys. This is Pre-Election on the Chain right here, all about digital asset, all about cryptocurrency. But how is this whole political thing going to work itself out? We've got a great guest with us tonight. Right over here, we've got Freecoiner. What is going on? How you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. Doing very well.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Great to have you here with us. And of course, co-host Chip right over here.
Right there. It's good to have you back, man. This is like your second appearance. It's pretty special, man.
Yeah, man.
It's pretty exciting. And when you hit 5, you get we didn't tell you about the special hoodie you get. You get an OTC hoodie. It's pretty cool. So we got something to work towards there.
Progress right to get that hoodie.
Right on, man.
So, but I think this is going to be a great show as people are bouncing in here and really getting ready to enjoy this. I think it's time to go. You ready, Chip?
Let's do it.
All right, let's go.
And now, the Roundtable with Jeff and Chip on the chain.
Bam, that's how we come right back. So there is pre-election jitters as it's impacting the economy. It's crazy, right as we're kind of getting into all this, there's no expectation of what the end result is going to be, even though I have my own personal opinion on on what we're going to see come Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning. However, we've seen the stock market going down a little bit. We've even seen the digital asset market kind of going a little bit crazy, right? You guys kind of noticed that. So Freecoiner, just as a quick opening to this, what are your thoughts? Is the digital asset market, just focus on that alone, is it going to change based on the outcome of Tuesday evening?
Yeah, I believe it will. I think right now, with all the focus being on the most, some people call it the most important election, the most hyped election, whatever you want to call it. We've never seen anything like this before in history. So I think with all that focus, it just the crypto market, the stock market, everything's taking a hit. So I believe after the fact, we could start seeing it go in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Chip, what are your thoughts on that? And with Facebook and Twitter getting dragged in front of Congress the past couple days, both of them tanked about 20% on Friday.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. I'm like, when did Jack Dorsey join the Taliban? I mean, like, my gosh. I mean, what the? It's like, he has that really weird.
It's all crazy.
It looked like he was a little bit drugged too. He's like, well, we don't do that. We actually have a process in place. And I'm like, dude, what? I mean, can somebody wake up Jack, please? And, all I know is that when they bring him in here, people say, well, nothing's ever going to happen. They continue to censor people. When you drag them in there and they perjure themselves over and over again, and then they say one thing, and then all of a sudden, even after the testimony, I see tweets going out there that disprove all the stuff they just previously said, because they always blame it on a glitch. Jeff, there was a glitch. Freecoiner, it just was a weird glitch. Weird how these glitches only affect one part of the aisle, right? Only the glitches happen on that side. They rarely ever happen on the other side. Only, in how they're censoring. Look, I mean, where's the freedom of thought anymore? There's no freedom of thought. If I say, look, Riddlers and bears are real, you have to believe in them, and I put a tweet out there and people are like, come on, man, everybody knows Riddlers and bears aren't real, but that's just my thoughts, my expression, it's what I want to say. So depending on who,
they're both real though.
Well, they are, Jeff. That's a whole different category, but I'm just saying they are real. And I do have a bears and Riddlers little, what do you call it, like a list on Twitter. It's like a secret list that I go into and I see all weird stuff, but
right.
Flat earth stuff. I love all that stuff. I can never get enough of it, man. All the stuff, the Great Reset, all that. But I think what's happening when you see what's happening with Twitter, you see what's happening with this election. It is a big election, and I think towards the end we probably will give our predictions. I can give my prediction right here. It's going to be Trump in a pretty serious whipping. It's going to be. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be by a larger margin. Last time it's going to eclipse 270 by easily, but it'll be way over 30. Was it 306 last time? I think it was. It's going to go in the 320s. It's going to be a wider margin, but that's just my prediction because he's running against probably one of the worst candidates in the history of candidates, and he hasn't even tried. I'm like, you ever go for a job? Like, they always like, well, what do you say at a job interview? They always go, well, ask for the job. Ask for the. He doesn't even ask for the job. Comes out, starts screaming at people.
All right.
So I don't know. Freecoiner. What are your thoughts? I mean, I find that it's getting a little bit. I'm excited, man. I mean, that's where I'm coming from. I'm pretty excited about what's going to happen Tuesday.
Yeah, I am too. I'm prepared as well. I've been telling people make sure you have food and water and a way to protect yourself. It's just hard to say what's going to happen after all of this. Now, as far as the election goes, the Democrats, I mean, they're trying to steal it the best way they can. So we have a situation where they are blocking people in some of the swing states. They're shutting down the election, where election booths or whatever there, where people can actually go and cast their ballots. They are giving the paper ballots like I've heard from anywhere from 3 days to up to like a week or two to be counted. They're not actually, and this is all via. If you guys take a look at InfoWars, you ever listen to that?
Alex Jones, know it well.
Oh yeah, I stay. That's how I kind of stay up with what's actually happening. So they were saying also that they're not requiring that the signatures match up. I mean, there's rampant fraud going on where they're actually changing the ballots. So they've been caught in Houston. They've been caught several places already. So
Veritas, Project Veritas.
Yeah.
So they just caught some people down in South Florida too. A couple of things happened. One, they were trying to pull ballots out of one of the boxes. They caught two guys doing that on Friday or on Thursday. And then they just caught somebody else trying to register. What was that? They tried to register. One individual was registering 50 people, but he was out of state registering people down in South Florida.
Wow.
Come on, Jeff, that
he's
never
following
happens.
the registrations, and it just they caught him because all the mail showed up at somebody's house.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah.
It threw things off a little bit.
Yeah.
But we were told it doesn't happen, Jeff. We were told there's no such thing as election fraud. Well, listen, I think
it's always happened.
It happened last time too. The thing was, it wasn't enough to pad it, and it wasn't enough to cover. I think it was prevalent last time. That's why there was such shock and awe. Like even with the padding, it wasn't enough, and people guesstimate or estimate that he won by a way larger margin. But look, I mean, most people tend to vote with their wallets or their the pocketbooks, whatever you want to call it, because it has a lot to do with at the end of the day. And I know you said something like this, Freecoiner, in your video. It's like you want to go home, you want to hang out with your family. You don't want to think that when there's a knock on the door, it's somebody coming to take you away or drag you away or come get your gun, all this kind of stuff. And people are like, well, that's just paranoia. You're just a nutter, man. Well, yeah. Well, when you start seeing cities burning down and they're like, well, this, let it get out of their system, and then they hide behind these Marxist organizations, and you feel like, well, it's just one of those things, and then you see the candidate say something weird. Oh, it's just old Joe.
Yeah. Well, and people, I've heard people say, well, that stuff's not going to happen. How could that ever? Like, have you been watching? It's already happening. There's a lot of stuff happening right now. There are people, getting beat up or beat down or all of that. I mean, it's happening right now, right in front of our faces. Just because in your location, you're not necessarily seeing it or experiencing it. Somebody is, and several somebodies are.
Yeah, agreed. Sorry, I threw you back in there. Just wanted to.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
He's like, wait a minute, what the heck is going on?
Where'd everybody go? Hey,
what is going on?
So you get a little bit of this political tension, definitely impacting the economy. But at the same time, someone once said there's no such thing as coincidences, and there's a lot of things that are lining up right now. One of the things that I covered on my last live stream was that you see all the banks, all over the world. You're starting to see, the central banks are starting to get into digital asset, and it's getting more and more serious. The conversations are ramping up. They're getting ready to roll these out. Pretty much every country is imminently either testing or in rollout phase, and so with all of that going on in this transformation, some are going to be centralized, some are in the blockchain, some, but at the same time, we're seeing this turmoil take place globally. And it just seems to be that there's too much orchestration. How is it right now that every country in the world is all of a sudden in this process of rolling out digital currency?
Right.
And it's not necessarily like the digital yuan, more centralized. Then you have what's going on in Canada, and then you have Cambodia, and then you have Singapore and Malaysia and Japan, and just all over the place. What's interesting about it all, though, is that we know that none of them can build on their own, so they're outsourcing, right? So I believe Consensus was just tapped to do some building, but out of all the countries in the world, one of the countries that we've been following for a little while is the Bahamas, and the Bahamas was the first to market, the first to roll out a digital asset or a digital currency with the sand dollar. So I think that element with the political element, something's going on. Something's going to transpire here over the next 6 months to 12 months. That is going to that economic changeover is going to happen no matter what the outcome is. But our economic security, I think, in this country is definitely going to be impacted by what the outcome is. And what are your thoughts on that, Freecoiner?
No, I totally agree. I mean, for a while there, I was thinking that all of this stuff that's happening was simply to hide the financial changeover that's happening, that's going on here, the reset and all that. Because, I mean, if people really knew what was happening, they wouldn't be happy. So, yeah, I mean, it's a perfect cover for an economic changeover.
But what do you think when it comes to the reset? We've heard all kinds of different incarnations of this, right? The one flavor that gets pushed out there, at least on Twitter, that I've seen, is that there's going to be this debt jubilee and everything, your home and all these things, your cars, you're going to own them all, but you're going to have to sign in blood on, give your blood and sign on a piece of paper with your finger that you don't own any of it. But are you cool with doing that? That's one of the flavors I've heard. The other one is the reset the financial system, a new global currency. So I don't know which flavors or things have you heard or do you think are more probable in this equation?
Well, I think, I've heard all of that, and I think it's definitely going to be a different currency and all that stuff. Because I've heard that they've already printed these new bills and all this other stuff. I mean, yet to be seen, but without a doubt, we are going to a different way of transacting money. And that way is going to be digital, because the powers that be want to control. They want to control everything economic. So what better way to control it than digitally?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a difficult position for us all to be in as investors in this digital asset space, the digital currency space. I think we're also going to see some conflict right now. There's things that happen. There's two sides to every battle. So you have the one side, I agree. They've been talking about the New World Order and the globalist agenda for a long time. If you remember, even George Bush Sr. came out talking about the New World Order, and so, he's part of, and so when you look at the Bush family, what was their relationship with this New World Order? Why was that conversation already taking place? But now we definitely see a division of the two sides. It's very clear, it's very obvious. Even what was happening over in the UK with Brexit, very clear understanding of two sides to this debate. The digital asset space through, is also interesting because you're right. There's this push for centralized control over the digital asset money, but now there's this whole new space that's growing, which is the DeFi, the decentralized space. And decentralized digital currency brings a whole new dynamic to the debate. And there's, the way I look at it from we wouldn't be in here supporting the digital asset space, if we didn't believe that this was kind of the future. But I also believe that as human nature, people are always going to find their way around it, especially the freedom loving side of things are always going to find a way to get around the totalitarian control, side of things, and that's through this decentralized. So the DeFi space, however you want to refer to it, the decentralized platform is going to have a big impact. And that's where you're going to have kind of a melding or a meeting of the minds between the two. And some parts of the world are going to end up centralized. We kind of have an idea who they are. The free countries are in a battle right now to see who they're going to be.
I was writing out the country we were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to say it, but it begins with a C, ends with a middle with a and a at the end.
It ends with an A.
It ends with a one of those U's at the end. Yeah.
I mean, I agree, man. Obviously this is a very viable way to handle economics and all that. I like the idea of digital currencies. I like the ease of use. There is still a lot that has to be worked out with the possibility of someone hacking and stealing and all of that stuff. All that stuff has to be worked out. But all in all, the technology itself is great. But from if I'm kind of picturing it from a globalist point of view, it is the best way to track what someone is doing, right? Because there's always going to be a record for every transaction. And when you introduce quantum computing into that, you just made it a whole lot easier to track everything everybody does real time. So, and I'm not saying that this is what's going on right now. I'm just saying a possible future could look like that, where quantum computing, because we already know a quantum computer could easily, once the technology is more streamlined, I guess you could say, it would easily crack any encryption, or I mean, within seconds, simply because of how it operates. So, there's always kind of a backdoor and definitely a reason to be concerned about any of this stuff when you have a malicious, evil, what I would consider evil group of people who don't care much about the people in the world, and they want to, have complete control.
Yeah, see, I think that's where, for me, I that's where the battle is, right? That's where the conflict is, because you're going to have the people that want the freedom. But I look at it right now in today's day and age, we can already be controlled, because banks aren't the safe place. We've already seen in other parts of the world where, they've basically shut down the banks. Look at what happened in Lebanon. Look what happened in Cyprus. Look what happened. It's happened in Greece. It's happened all over the world. They get to a point financially where one day you have no access to your banks, or, if we think about from a control perspective, our credit cards, pretty much everybody uses credit card. People don't go in and buy stuff with cash anymore, from your gas, to, just everything you do. Your cell phone is always tracking you. So if the government, however they, we want to look at it from that globalist perspective, wanted to track us individually and shut us down, they could do it today. Probably easier that if we ended up in a decentralized type of scenario. The question is whether or not the government's going to allow a decentralized economy, or are they going to force it to be a centralized economy? That's the question. But right now, unless you're spending your money in gold, even if you're going into fiat, most people aren't transacting in fiat, meaning that you're not earning your money in fiat. That means you have to go to an ATM. So as soon as you withdraw that money from an ATM, you've date stamped yourself at that location. Your phone is tracking you to that location. So right now we have almost no freedoms. right? And most people are also posting on a social media account somehow, almost daily, and that's time stamping and location stamping you. So it's almost, to me, we've already given up those freedoms, and now the question is, how do we save ourselves from the globalist agenda? How do we maintain our sovereignty? And Chip, before I turn this over to you, I even think, with the central bank digital currency, even if it's centralized, there's never going to be, at least in our lifetime, a global currency. I believe that every nation, we don't have global understanding. We barely have, national understanding. So having a global, currency is a non-starter as far as I'm concerned. But every digital currency, centralized or decentralized, is going to be a silo for the most part. And that means that whether it's in the US, China, Canada, Malaysia, Nigeria, somewhere in Latin America, doesn't matter. They're going to have their own siloed sovereign currency, just in digital format. Chip.
Yeah, I mean, again, if I get on a rant about why I don't believe any of that, a lot of that makes sense. But I think Freecoiner, you really nailed it. It's like when you think about what's the whole idea of any of this concept of freedom, what Jeff was just referencing. It's like, and thanks, Jeff, for that optimistic take on that. That was really awesome. I really thanks for bringing me down, man. I had to assemble. What am I talking about? Where am I?
Right there.
I'm on a planet third planet stone from the sun. I'm on planet Earth somewhere in North America. I had to situate myself again. But this whole idea, what I think is weird is that there tends to be some groupthink, right? What I mean by that is that a bunch of people latch onto some kind of an idea and they go, well, the CBDCs, or you have there's a country called China and they're having theirs and they're just gonna take over because they're first and everything else. And you have like Jay Powell coming out saying, the chairman of the Fed saying, well, it's important to get it right. Well, okay, the SEC in 3, 4, 5 years hasn't got anything right, hasn't announced anything. But as it relates to these CBDCs, I don't really see where, we're getting the whole idea of this freedom that we talk about. What kind of freedom do you have if you're a country? I don't care what country you are, anywhere in Europe, Australia, the UK, South Africa, you have a country and then you don't own your own currency. You don't control your own currency. These central banks we need to get away from central banks. Now, if you were to print a federal dollar, like a new dollar that represented the US, had nothing to do with the Federal Reserve, because it's time to get away from this whole system that's built upon debt. So the whole idea of having these CBDCs, having these central banks, plays into the whole thing where you're talking about freedom. Yeah, I think as people, we're okay with a certain level of freedom being eroded. I have a friend of mine. He doesn't have a Facebook. He's not on Twitter. He doesn't do any of that because he really is into the whole idea of like, hey, I don't trust any of these companies unless I'm visible on them. But then I bring up things like, well, that sounds like a crazy old guy, and it's like, hey, I'm not going to call you on the phone in case somebody overhears you. It's like, were you that guy back when the phones came out? It's like, talking to you because someone might be on the party line and they may hear me. I'm like, you start sounding crazy because then you're not living in this world. You're living in like you're peeking, you're living in a Faraday cage, like McAfee. He's got like a Faraday so it's all his things don't get hit and, turn things on sparingly. And then you're like Mr. Conspiracy Theorist, always looking over your shoulder. You always get that one eye, like looking around everywhere. And like, that's not a comfortable way to begin because we're okay with that. So the groupthink says, well, don't worry, this is all because of you. We're doing this because of you, because we like you, because governments care about their people. And I think one of the things that the reason that the president right now has resonated so much is because I think it's the first politician and that I can think of that actually had an agenda, published the agenda, and actually did what they said they were going to do. Because they go like, we're going to do this, and we're going to kiss babies, and we're going to put, everyone's going to be healthy. There's going to be special machines you get in, and you'll all be cured. Everyone's like, yeah. And they get in office like, well, what happened to this? What happened to all the babies? And it's like, well, don't worry about that. That was just
now that I'm in office. Say on the election trail. Yeah, that's it.
It's like after the election's in the bag, it's like, wait a minute. So that's the whole thing where you see, promises made, promises kept. And the same goes for the digital asset industry. Is like, you know, when you see companies like a $10 billion company like Ripple, they're like, hey man, looks like we might have to get out of this place because we're hamstrung. We can't do business here. And you know, how long are you going to wait for, you know, regulation clarity? I don't blame them. I think it's more of them kicking it up of saying, hey, wait a minute, a $10 billion company in the US is not going to be a US company, a base company anymore. They're going to change their headquarters. They're not going to be in the US. I think those things are pretty big, but I mean, I think I fell off topic 7 or 8 times. I kind of lost track of that, but I was just on a rant. I was just like, you know, filling some space there. But anyway, Freecoiner, what am I? Tell me what I missed. What did I miss something there in that whole rant?
I don't think you missed anything. It's just, you know, there are different ways to see it all, right? I'm optimistic with caution. Okay, I know what the possibilities are. But unfortunately, when you have greed and mixed with power, it just doesn't turn out right. And that's what we're seeing. Because why would a central bank need to be created in the first place? I mean, that was about control. It was about stealing money. Those people are still in control. Now, the dollar itself, you made a very good point, Jeff, and I agree with you. And also the fact that we've already given up so much of our freedom and all of that, dealing with credit cards and all that. Yeah, you're exactly right. And the problem is that we've been incrementally taken down that path. So it seems as though the whole purpose was to get us to this point where we're not used to dealing with cash, because at one point, that's all we dealt with. I mean, just imagine if there were never any credit cards, we would be dealing with cash. So, you know, utilizing just that paradigm, just the fact that people are now used to not dealing with cash and they would rather have a credit card and you know, you're not actually having to handle your real money. It's just numbers on a screen. You know, it's just an incremental ratcheting down of this control. And now we're approaching just a whole different era. There doesn't need to be any central banks anymore. What would a central bank need to be around for? Because the control they don't need that type of control anymore. They don't need physical control over money. It's there. And also, yeah, different countries can have their own perceived fiat, right? But if it's all digital, do they really? Because we already know that the digital, I mean, that was the whole purpose of XRP. So you can, at face value, you know, we're all different countries. I got my own money or my own fiat, but we can transact as if we have the same. I mean, does that really exist? Not really. I mean, it's just for our benefit to show us that, oh yeah, no, you're good. You actually have your own. And you don't really have to worry about all the trouble that you used to have. And that's how it's always presented. Oh, you know what? You don't need all that trouble. Just do it this way. It's a lot simpler, but you're actually giving up that sovereignty that we should actually have. I mean, right. Underpinnings are there. You know, they are there. We just have to be we have to be wise at, you know, how we're going to continue down this road. But I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think we have a whole lot of choice. It's going the way it's going.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, yeah, I think this election speaks for that choice. You know, and I believe that for a long time. You know, there's a distinct difference in the world. You know, as you travel around the world, there's a clear political divide. You know, and one of the reasons why people have always looked up to the United States is because they know, hands down, when they come to the United States, there's something called the American dream. And the American dream is being able to build something out of nothing. You know, there's very few countries in the world that allow you to do that. And it doesn't matter what your level of education or where you come from. And then there's the rest of the world that still believes that the government has supervisory power over the people, you know, and it's a form of disenfranchisement, of the individual, of the individual. So here we believe in individualism, and as an individual, when you build wealth and you do well for yourself and your family, then out of the kindness of your heart, then you reach out and you try to lift other people up. Whereas this other mindset is, the government is all knowing, all seeing, all controlling, and they know better than everybody else. So we're going to take from you, and the government is then going to decide who they pull up. And it's been proven time and time again that in the private space, people are more charitable to bring up other people than the government will be, because the government is oppressive in nature, and they would prefer to have people. They're only going to help people to a certain level, and then they're going to keep them there. And we've seen that as a perfect example here in the United States, and we see that in other parts of the world. And I think a good example of that was even in England. There was something, at one point, I don't know if they still have it, they had something called the dole. So anyone coming out of high school was immediately allocated X amount of money, and they started having problems where people, they come out of high school, they don't have to work, because they have X amount of money. It might not have been enough to really do anything positive, which they didn't do anything positive. It was enough to go out and drink or hang out or do whatever, and now we see similar rumblings, in the United States. We've seen how the government can subjugate and oppress, groups of people, even in the United States, through this mentality, undermining, the mentality, and so that to me is a complete difference of opinion, in terms of where the world could go politically, and that's what we're fighting for in this election. And that's at the same time, from an economic perspective, that's exactly what we're fighting for as well, even in the digital economy. Right? The digital economy is very representative, like you just said. It's either control centralized, where the government is going to track every single thing that you do, and not only track it, trace it, and be able to shut you down. Because right now, at least with a credit card and banking, it's all private, right? So the government it takes a lot for the government to come in and shut your bank account down. They can't just all of a sudden decide one day they're going to shut your credit cards. I mean, if you're in good standing, but now if they go into this centralized control mechanism where they can do everything, and even Canada, we saw they said, oh, the blockchain's amazing. Why? Oh, well, we can monitor and make sure everyone's paying their taxes. Okay. Well, what if they don't pay their taxes? What does that mean? Are you going to then take it?
Yeah.
So automatically, oh, this person didn't pay, there was a mistake, they're going to now be able to just take from you. And I think that gets very dangerous at that point.
Well, it depends if they're a politician. If they're a politician, then it will just let that ride, right? It's just like certain politicians in the United States. But I wanted to piggyback off something you said, and I hope everybody doesn't take this the wrong way, but you talked about the American dream. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's any French dream. I don't think there's a Canadian dream. I don't think there's an Australian dream. And I'm not sure there's a Great Britain dream, right? It's just not how it works, right? There's a whole idea of, and one of the things that I think that needs to be protected, especially when people from outside are watching the show, we have viewers from all over the world. I think one of the things they miss about the United States Constitution, it's a constitution that limits the government. It's a constitution that says the government can't do that. A lot of constitutions talk about what the government can do. This one talks about what the government can't do and how it protects the people. And a lot of people misunderstand the Second Amendment about the right to bear arms, to have guns. And people are like, oh, there's too many guns. Well, they came for your guns in Australia. And how's that working out for you? Remember, everyone's like, this is the greatest thing. The first step is they come for their guns. If you look throughout history, they come for the guns. One of the things they want to do. And then they want to control the health care. The government's going to run your health care because then you control the health care, no guns. You control the people. You pass whatever you want to pass. And that Second Amendment is what protects the First Amendment on the free speech side. So, and most people don't get it right. They go like, well, why do you guys need that to protect from protection? No. The whole idea of the Second Amendment is to protect us from tyranny, the government. It's to protect the individual Americans, to protect against the government interference. It's like if you get into further amendments, you can't house militia at your house. You can't do, it tells the government what they can't do. And there's a big difference between the two-party system. The conservatives tend to believe that, this individualism, this freedom, that we know what to do with our money. We know how we want to spend our money. We don't like people telling us what to do because we think we know how to do it better. And then when you return more money to people, let them decide. We don't want other entities, and the other one, the left tends to be like what Jeff had referenced, where it's a little bit more about the group think. We'll do it together, big government, let a bunch of people decide. And although it sounds great on paper that it's for everybody, but what happens is you have the 1% of the elites who are always looking over their shoulder because there's always somebody waiting to take their place, and the 99% of the people whose value and quality of life goes down. And we see it in all the countries. But for some reason, people think, well, they just didn't implement it right. They just didn't tick this box, and they click this. And if they would have just tweaked that little lever a little bit, it would have worked. But it never works, right? I mean,
right. Well, when you look at history, primarily the feudal system is by far been the system of choice, whether they had a choice or not. And when you look at that, how many good kings were there? Were there more good kings than bad ones? Typically, you had a more tyrannical king. And the thing is, it goes back to something that I always, say to myself, and I try to tell people: power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. People, unfortunately, are inherently, I don't want to say evil, but they get to a point where they don't want to be ousted and they love their position. And to be honest with you, a lot of people are just sadistic. They like to see other people in pain. And that is just the case. That is just how it is, unfortunately. There are very few people who are extremely empathetic, or at least the people that have aspirations of being in power. Because most people who are, very compassionate, things like that, they don't have those type of aspirations. Normally, a good-hearted person has to be pushed into those positions. So, I think that we always have to be aware. And I default to the most extreme idea, or the worst case scenarios. I guess the better way to put it with everything. Because at least if you go the furthest you can think of, it's easier to reel it back than it is to, crank it up when it needs to be, because it's that's what we're seeing right now. I think Trump is going to win, but man, look at all the stuff that's being done. I mean, have you guys heard about what Hunter Biden has been found doing? Joe Biden is taking money from Ukraine. He's obviously in bed with the Chinese. I mean, it's so obvious, yet people have a hard time, dealing with it, stepping up to the realization and doing anything about it. I mean, right now we need to be doing something about this. Like, way worse. Well, not worse, far more than is being done. But that's not going to happen because the people that need to do something are good-hearted people. They're compassionate people, and they want to give the benefit of the doubt. And you can't do that with evil people. You just can't.
No, but you're right. People don't want to believe that. And one thing I was going to say is that, you talk about in your videos, like, you're really kind of manning up. It's not your words, it's mine. But you talk about, hey, look, we're the ones that are someone has to step up. It's the reason that, there's a bunch of outcasts from England in the beginning got together and put this all, the founders and the framers that put together the Constitution and worked on it for over close to 20 years to get it right. And think about all the possible things that could happen. And one of the things that people forget about is that Electoral College. You go like, yeah, but more people voted. Well, that's the framers knew that if they allowed the big cities to choose, then we have in California and New York choosing every single president, and that's not going to work. Jeff, what were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, you can't have rule of the mob, but I think you're spot on with that. I mean, it's interesting because the idea that people are put in a position of power, I think it doesn't just corrupt the people, the rest of the people, but they're corrupted. The power itself corrupts people, but it depends on the type of power, because if it's, if well, you even see it, some of these CEOs, in big corporations, they're paid tens of millions of dollars to do a job, and they get their bonuses and everything else, regardless of the company makes money or not. So their idea in their head of their worth is outside of reality, right? Same thing with, I mean, if you start the business and it was your sweat equity, you built it up, you're the one who led this company, you developed it. Hey, you know what? Everything that you've done for that company is well worth it. But if you're a hired head to come in as a CEO and they're recruiting people like they're recruiting athletes, it gets out of hand, and it's the same corruption. Athletes, by the time they're paid, a $50 million contract, $100 million contract, they no longer live in this reality. Actors and actresses, in Hollywood, they no longer live in reality, and so their ideas are also then completely warped because they're no longer living in reality. Now, if you take it to the political level, the politicians, the same thing, because think about, a politician is a representative of the people, and they're put in place through an election to represent our voice and our ideas. And so, but they get there, and if you go and try to have a meeting with some of these representatives, it's a big task to have a meeting. And you see some of their attitudes, where they just don't believe that they should be answering to the people anymore, and yet they'll answer to the people or run around in their own individual districts, when they need the votes. But beyond that, they think they're above it. And that's the problem. I mean, that's a major problem. And it goes back to your point, is that absolute power corrupts absolutely. We've let it happen. That's our problem. That's our fault, over and over and over and over again, where we become, subjects to those that are elected. And that's super problematic. The president can only serve 2 terms. That's it. But why is it that congressional representatives can serve until they die?
Right.
It makes no sense whatsoever. No sense.
Exactly.
And you see these people are so out of touch. Somebody like the Biden family, and the Bidens are just one example, but you can go down the list of every congressional representative, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter, and look at what their stature was when they got into office. How much money did they earn? What was their net value? And now, all these years later, what was their net value? And that's where, and then you start seeing the payoffs, and people are like, oh, it doesn't happen. Okay. Well, when Obama was running for president, he got a book deal worth $1 million, but he didn't make $1 million the year prior, so it was crazy that as he's running up to his election, he gets a book deal he hadn't even written the book. Bill Clinton coming out of office, big book deals. Hillary Clinton, big book deals, and then you see, but that's how they transfer the money around, it's just like over and over. And again, I don't care, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter, but those are perfect examples, because they're recent. I mean, George Bush was already worth a significant amount of money, so to go back and try to figure out what he was worth. But the Clintons were in public life their entire life, right? I mean, Bill Clinton was a governor, and then, how is it now? I mean, they're worth huge amounts of money. And then you look at Chelsea Clinton, all of a sudden she's the head of she's 40 years old now, but she's the head of a venture capitalist firm, and it's just things like that, the way the money is moved around, and they keep it and consolidate it within the power of the elitists, and that's where it becomes, it's a whole different dynamic. And we have to say, look, we're not willing to allow that to happen anymore. And when you talk about decentralized finance, I think we need decentralized politics, and so government mandated, government control, put the economy, the Federal Reserve, like Chip said, has never been audited. Hey, you know what? If you were to put it into the blockchain, hey, let that transparency be audited. Let the government always be transparent. I want to know every last, I don't want to know, that there's, hundreds of people manipulating the books. And that's the one thing Trump did. And people look and say, he hasn't filled all these vacancies in government. Well, it was on purpose. You don't need all these people.
Right.
You know, and he's proven that there are tons and tons of people in government, and now they're upset because, hey, you know what? He can fire, you know, people in
wrote the
federal government can be fired now. Oh,
executive
well,
order.
yeah, before they couldn't be fired. Could you imagine you get a job in government and you can't be fired? Unbelievable. You know, so think about that. Yeah, I mean, that's insane.
I know. I mean, you look at Pelosi, while she's telling everybody they have to wear masks and they can't go out and they can't do business, yet she's over getting her hair done without a mask. I mean, this is ridiculous, man. You know, and the thing is, I think people need to be just, you know, we need to shed this whole PC thing. There is no such thing as politically correct, because I'm going to tell you something, man.
Only here.
When it comes to your life, okay, we all have to protect each other. And to be honest with you, man, I look at it like this is life or death. That's just, I mean, I hate to go to that extreme, but I mean, what is the consequence of what's about to happen if it happens the way it could possibly happen? If we see a Biden presidential office or whatever, that's going to be a bad thing. He's going to shut the country down immediately, and he's going to kill the oil industry. What do you think that's going to do? That's going to kill a lot of people. This whole thing with the 19 and everything, it's killed millions of more people just because of the shutdowns.
Yep.
The third world countries are being decimated because they have no food.
Yeah, and look at what's happening in Nigeria. There were people just running and ransacking. It's crazy in parts of the world, and we don't see it. They're not showing it. You're right, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the consequences of ignoring it, and you brought this up earlier, is that when you know, it's the frog in the pot. You know, it's like, wow, it's getting a little warm here. That's cool. And you gradually, as the temperature starts to boil, by the time it gets to boil, you don't really realize it, right? And so that's kind of like, well, yeah, they can crack me with my credit card, and oh yeah, they can do this. People are more concerned about, you know, getting like a spam email. They're like, I got a spam email. What do I do? It's a spam email. I just hit the delete key. I'll be real honest with you. It's like real simple to get rid of. I'm a little more concerned about like all this paper that ends up in my mailbox that goes directly into the recycle bin. Exactly. You know, and now I got to be a detective. I got to go through it. Like the other day I found, you know, my wife found a check. She's like looking through it, and there's like, oh my God, there's a check in here. And I would have like just tossed it, you know, because you got to be like and I'm like, what do we get all this stuff for? And it's like, so the cost of ignoring it is higher than anything we can do. Well, you know, it's just this and it's just that. I think, you know, I was watching that new Borat movie, right? And people, you know, the whole theme of it's like, let's make fun of America.
Exactly.
Let's make fun of Americans. But you know what happens in those movies? What you do see is you see the true American spirit. Yeah, he goofs on everybody. But you know what? People are generally trying to help him in those movies.
Right.
And he keeps goofing on them and punching him in the face and doing stupid stuff. But they're trying to help him. They're like almost feeling sorry for him. Where maybe other cultures, like, you know, maybe the French would be like, get out of here, man. You know, beat it. You know, and you know, but they wouldn't put up with that kind of crap. But you know, sometimes Americans, like you say, they have big hearts and they're trying to help out. You know, my wife wouldn't even watch it. She goes, I can't watch this thing because all he's doing is making fun of Americans. You know, especially being a Brit. You know.
Yeah, I watched the first one he came out with years ago, and I was just like, man, what is the point in this? I mean, it's ridiculous. And you know, I was going to say this. See, people, most people in the U.S. You know, we've lived very, very fat, and we're very happy for the most part. We haven't had to face much adversity. The only war that's ever been fought on this land, well, you know, basically two, Revolutionary and the Civil War, right? So there hasn't been much, like on a wide scale, much misery, I'll say. When I was in Zimbabwe for about 8 months back between 2006 and 2008. And guys, I'm going to tell you something. What I saw there is, I mean, it was a travesty, because there were checkpoints in and out of every city. No matter where you went, you could not get out of going through a checkpoint, and then multiple checkpoints between the cities, right? So the people that were stopping us, I mean, the fact that I'm a American citizen, they were very reluctant to do anything to me, because I always stand my ground. But just a citizen over there, they could do what they wanted. They would take them out of their cars, beat them up. They would take their money. I mean, there were situations where they would even find some lady that they wanted and they would just take them.
Man.
A friend of mine, so we were going to a city called, no, I forgot the name of it, but we were going to another city while we were over there. As we're going, driving down this main road, there were like all these people out, on the sides of the road, and there was like a military base nearby. So I was driving a little bit too fast, and I got stopped. Right, it was basically a radar trap. So I got stopped, get out, and what they charge, I think it was like 800 Zim, right, which was like $5. I mean, not even that, I think. So as I'm dealing with that, my girlfriend was there with me at the time. She was taking pictures. Well, they call her over, and I like passed her, and she was walking the opposite direction. I'm like, wait, what's going on? So I turn around, and they're trying to take my camera. They're like, no, give us that, So, I wouldn't let them take it, and they were like, well, we'll take you. I said, no, you can take me to the American embassy. That's where we can go. So they backed down, but then they turned their attention to my Zimbabwean partner, who is a citizen over there. And so they told him that they were going to take him to the cells and beat him up. Okay. Now that's where we are headed. And people don't understand this. Anybody listening to this, you have to come to the realization there is real evil in the world. There's real evil. Okay. Yeah. There are people who want to do you harm, and they don't give a damn what they do or what they say to you or your family. It exists. So it's better to stand up now than try to do it later, because once you don't have a gun, look at Australia. They can go in and take somebody when they want, and they have no way to protect themselves. That's in Australia. It's in Europe. Do you know that they don't even report this, but after they took the guns, the home invasion rate it just skyrocketed.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Criminals don't care about.
No, criminals know where the gun-free zones are, don't they? They always attack gun-free zones, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I can go on, man, but.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point though in Zimbabwe, because that example exists over and over and over again. But if you go back a few years before that, Zimbabwe politically was in a slightly different place. Yeah. And Zimbabwe had been a major producer and exporter of agricultural product. Then there was a switchover of the governments, and that changed everything. The whole, dynamic, the political structure changed, everything changed. And then they basically removed all the different farms over there. They removed the ownership of those farms. Yep. The new president put all of his people in place. The military was then answered only to the president. And that's what people don't understand. I think that's that dynamic, because like you said, people in the US are relatively coddled. People in Europe are relatively coddled. For some reason, though, when you go to Europe, they still think back to like World War II. I don't know if it's like baked in even before that into their mindset, but if you look at, the invasion that's been going on over in Europe, and the way they've covered that up. Yeah. But it's just example after example. But Zimbabwe is perfect. Your experience over there probably would have been drastically different prior to that. But now Zimbabwe is also heavily reliant on, and had been at least reliant on, subsidies from the United Nations and others, whereas they were exporting, now they're relying agriculturally. Venezuela, another perfect example.
Oh, yeah.
Oil, gemstones, precious metals, everything in that country. They were a major exporter of meat products. They were the leading meat industry in Latin America. And now they have no meat. Now they have no food. Now they have no nothing. It's just millions of % of inflation on their currency. Their currency is not worth anything. That's the other side of the coin that they never want to tell you about. To me though, the digital, right now, the digital asset space, to me, what it's representative, it's an opportunity for the people to reclaim their individuality and their individual freedom. And it doesn't matter what country they're in. That's why I love looking at what's going on down in Africa. You see a lot of development in Nigeria right now. You see more development coming out of India even. It's starting to churn. The ideas that the government can only oppress the people so much, because at some point the people are going to become outspoken. And when they get outspoken financially, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Just like over in China, it's another, people say, oh, well, over there, they're communist government, but they have a capitalist economy. Well, for years, when they allowed that capitalist economy to start growing, it would grow, they would shut it down and back it up. Let it grow, shut it down, back it up. Let it grow, and they control the different areas. So now they understand very well which areas within that country they allow to grow and flourish, because if it gets out of hand, they just shut that one area down. Nobody else knows about it, right? Because they shut down the media, and so that's how things are manipulated. And over here, it kills me because people are so coddled that all of these goods and products have been made over there, not over here, and they don't even think twice about it. It kills me. But this digital asset space can free so much. But like we talked about in the beginning, if we don't put the checks and balances on it now, it could be led right down the same path of where everything was before. I just find right now there's a lot of turmoil in that space, and the tech is a little bit further progressed, where people on their own can create something that the governments have no control over. And I think that's the realization they all came to, which is exactly why the governments are trying to adopt the digital asset space now, or at least the digital currencies, to make it look like they're, on cutting edge. But if there's more Bitcoins being rolled out that are decentralized, and let's say, if the whales come in and you can control the mining, and control and you can control the Bitcoin, let's say it gets to that point, well, you know what? Another one pops up, and then another one pops up, then another one pops up, right? And what are they going to do? They can't control the people unless they're going to shut down the internet. It's not going to happen. And that's DeFi is blowing up all over the place. And it's just, the genie's out of the bottle, just like capitalism over in China. It's out of the bottle. You can't put it back in. Once you give people a taste of freedom and the good life, it's hard taking it away. And hard Venezuela, perfect example. When you take it away, you take it away, and the whole country's going down with it.
Yeah, Jeff, and that's exactly why you get 30,000 Latinos in Miami who are having a rally. Why? Because they had family, or they immigrated from Venezuela, a very heavy Cuban population. They understand the difference. I think the problem, when I see these, like, well, what's the problem with freedom? The problem with freedom is you don't know you're free, okay? When you don't know the contrast, it's like anything you go through in life, you can get up in the morning and say, say you battled something, some personal demon or whatever it might be, but you know the difference. You have the one part, you have the other part, right? So contrast. When you're free, you're just free. So you guys think about things you're unhappy about. Well, I don't like this, and this word doesn't work for me anymore, and I don't like this statue, and I don't like. So the whole point of it is like, it doesn't really come down to the actual thing. It's like people are sitting around so content, so happy. Even the poverty in the United States, you're rich compared to, if you have $1 in your pocket, you have a roof over your head, and you have a way to move around, you are like better than 95% of the world's population right now. And it's like,
people have no idea, Chip. They have no idea what poverty looks like in other parts of the world.
Right, but I'll tell you what people do have an idea about. They do have an idea when they spent their entire life savings to buy a bar, to then leave their job, to then open a bar and then watch it get burned down overnight, and see that the areas they're burning down, they're supposed to be they're supposed to be caring about a particular group of people. And what are they doing? They're burning down minority-owned businesses. They start burning down cities. And when the government says that's okay, that's when people start to like, whoa, hang on a second. That's not okay with me. And the only way you can really see how that is in action is you got to be able to watch it, right? You can tell somebody, you can say like, well, this could potentially happen one day where they just knock on your door and they come get you and they drag you out. You're like, I saw that movie, but no, that can't happen here. But watch, it starts happening. You know, I saw that one video that went viral on the internet where a pregnant woman in Australia, she had started something on Facebook, and they came into her house and they wanted to take her away. The guy didn't have any guns. The guy had no way to protect it. All he had was a camera. That's all. But that we're even more, they were even a little bit more timid in this thing. But what happens when they grab your phone and they smash it? Well, what happens if you don't have any proof of that? What happened? Oh, they took my wife one day. Well, does anybody know? Who was it? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
And so if people think one day,
Yeah.
that day's now, that day's here. It's like right around the corner. It's like on the horizon. And, you know, Reagan said it best. He said, we're always one generation away from losing it all. One generation or less from losing everything.
Yeah. Freecoiner, I want to get your opinion on taking off what Chip said. And I think that there's a complete misunderstanding of what Chip's saying, you know, in terms of people's mindsets. So there's one subset in this country that believes that they're fighting fascism. You're right. And they believe that they're, you know, fighting racism.
Right.
And yet everything that they promote, all of their ideals, everything that they've embraced, all their political representatives, all of their political policies embrace totalitarianism and embrace racism and are actually fascist to their core. And I find it interesting that the one that is running around labeling other people as racist and fascist is always the one that's racist and fascist. That's how I look at it. You know, anti-Semitic, you know, racist, fascist, totalitarian, anti-religion, anti-everything. And they're trying to control speech. They're kind of trying to control money. They're kind of trying to control everything. You know, it amazes me. You know, maybe it's through brainwashing of these kids when they've been growing up through elementary, middle, and high school, and now even in college, they're brainwashed. But I'll give you the last comment on that.
No, I totally agree. I think the thing that we have to remember is that someone being racist on the same level as just a normal everyday person out there, they don't benefit from that. What do you benefit from being a racist? So you have to understand that the reason why racism and, you know, all these different things are pushed is because they want to divide us along any and every line they can. As long as we're divided and we're looking at each other and suspicious of one another, we'll never come together and be a formidable foe to them. We're always fractured. So if we drop all of these ideals that they give us and understand that the real divide is those who have and those who have not, which, I mean, and essentially it's the elite versus us. And it's always been that way. So if we can just drop all of this other stuff, stop looking at this guy down here. And, you know, because I went to the gun store the other day, and, you know, my demeanor, you know, I always try to be very just welcoming and just nice and whatnot, as far as I can be. I could tell one guy wanted to kind of speak to me, but he was very like, just not. And, you know, and I'm like, look, dude, I'm not your enemy. In fact, if you would take the time to talk to me, you might find that we have a lot more in common than you would ever think. So that's where I am with it.
Well said. Well said. And look at the time, Jeff. What happened with the time there we are? You know, I always have to be the guy, but we usually can
letting
keep this
you be the guy.
I'm going to be that guy. I'm always the bad guy, the
Always
time
the bad
guy,
guy.
right? So,
Yep.
but look, I mean, I just wanted to say that we are going to go backstage. We're going to do a little bit. We're going to probably do something upbeat and fun, and but we're going to go backstage with Freecoiner exclusively on Cinnamon. Click on the link below. You guys can check that out and walk over with us. Yeah, walk over. And by the way, you don't need a subscription. A lot of people are like, well, Cinnamon, it's a monetization platform. That's right, but it's open to everybody. All you have to do is click on the link, press play, and start watching, and drop a comment or two. One of the cool things that I like about Cinnamon is that when you drop the comment, it puts the timestamp on it. So if you go great video and it says 1 minute and 27 seconds, like, well, that's that's a 25-minute video. It's like, it's like, you're like, man, I caught you, but if you're at least going to fast forward to the end. But anyway, we're going to go over and talk. We're going to talk, and, Freecoiner, thank you for coming on, man. Number 2, happy to have you on for, our pre-election special. And we did talk real on digital assets, so thanks, man.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
That was awesome. Yeah, hang out with us here a minute as we wrap this up. I just want to say, hey, I appreciate everybody that's here, part of the On the Chain community, everyone that comes in, spends their Saturday mornings with me on the HODL Review, spends their Sunday evenings with us here on the Roundtable. You guys are really great. Love all the comments, love all the feedback. And for when Mullet out there, we stuck to topic. This was today's topic. So today we were on topic the whole time. I don't know, Chip.
We really were because it was open.
Perfect. It was open. Open topic, open format. But yeah, we're going to go over to the other platform. Join us over on Cinnamon, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Oh, before we go, we're going to have a show on Wednesday. That's going to be premiered at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, the day after Election Day. So tune in for that one, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. We're going to talk a little bit about building with the XRP ledger. Why is that important? What does that do? All that good stuff. And that's going to be on Wednesday. That's all I've got, Chip. I think we're ready to go backstage and hang out some more.
Let's do this. All right, guys. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.